Welcome back to another episode of Reel Chums, where chatting about movies feels like hanging out with friends. I am your host, Marcel, and with me as always is my co-host, Danny.
This week, we're discussing the 2021 film Come On, Come On, written and directed by Mike Mills, starring Joaquin Phoenix, Gabby Hoffman, Woody Norman, and Scoot McNairy. Why is it that I always get the craziest names?
I know this is how I set it up for me to do the quick little introduction, and you get stuck with the name. So
we are also accompanied by a special guest, the incredible writer, content producer, social host Maggie Hill, the Maggie Hill.
Hello,
so, Maggie.
Hello. That's me. That's my name.
We're so excited to have you on the show. And thank you so much for joining us. I had pinged you, probably like a month ago. And, but I was just really excited to have you on the pod, partly because like, I could tell you really love movies.
I do.
You know, the content you make, is like, introduced me to a couple of new shows. Come On, particularly.
Yeah.
There's one other movie I don't remember off the top of my head because I've watched a lot of movies since that. But, I think like you have, I love the style. I find it fun and informative and down to earth, and it's something it's some places lack.
Yeah, no, it's great. I think you recently did a post about like writing to your audience, and I love that you talked about like about Bluey and like an episode about consent, right? And then and then talking about how the writers are speaking to their audience, to studios, and just I thought it was great. I think you bring awesome insights and a unique look into writing, into filmmaking. It's awesome. So thank you so much for being on here.
Thank you. Those were the kindest words I've ever heard in my life. My goodness. Thank you.
So, is there anything you want listeners to know about you?
Oh, goodness. I love the Muppets more than life itself. And I feel like that's the first thing every human being should know about me.
Okay.
But in addition to that, y'all have basically said my whole goal with being online is just like showing that liking movies doesn't have to be an academic pursuit, and that just asking the question why about anything in the world makes anything you watch 10 times better.
I love that. I like that.
Me too.
Real quick, we're going to be reviewing Come On, or talking about Come On. But to our listeners, if you're watching, look at me in the eyes. We are so sorry for what happened last week. Our hard drive failed. And we're going to eventually get to it. We're going to release what we've lovingly titled our lost episodes.
Yes.
They will be out there one day. But as of right now, our hard drive failed. We tried to connect on it. We tried to export the files. It's just not working. But we're back to normal, regular schedule. And Danny, any other thoughts on that? I know you talked about it pretty well on our socials.
I can't get into it because I get so mad. It was like I was ready to like finish up the episode, change it because we had messed up our scheduling. And thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, that was my real life 07 that I was trying to do.
I was like, oh, salute to the hard drive. I know. I will say if we reach when we reach 500, or should we do 1,000
listeners?
Yeah, listeners.
1,000.
But yeah, once we get to 1,000 listeners, I'll just fork over the money. If you like to get those lost episodes prior, we have a donate button on our website. No pressure. I just figured if you wanted to get to those lost episodes earlier, because there's some juicy content.
There's some really great content. My wife was like, "Oh, just shoot." Then I'm like, "No, you don't understand."
No, it was like there was this little. I don't know. Let me ask this, Maggie. Have you ever lost a project?
Yes.
What was that feeling like for you?
It feels like being in the depths of despair, reaching my arms out above the waves and feeling them pull me back in as I lose all hope and my lungs fill with water and I have an eventual acceptance of my defeat.
Okay, so we're going to hire Maggie to write all of our intros going forward. That was way, I'm like, okay, I am not as eloquent.
That's how I felt. Had no idea how to say it like that. But yeah, exactly.
Gotta write to your audience, man. Gotta write to your audience.
There we go.
Look, we're working on it, okay? I can create to audiences. Writing.
I believe in you. Hey, look at me. Look at me in the eyes. I believe in you.
Anyone who's listening and is wanting to do something with content, if all you can do is think about who your audience is, you're going to be just fine. It's like truth. Yeah. So let's get into Come On. We start off the episodes with a question of the day. Sometimes they're just random questions. Sometimes they would be would you rathers. This time it's going to be would you rather.
Okay.
Okay. So, would you rather have to stay with the boy's name I just lost? Jesse, or have to deal with the father, Jesse's father?
So like hang out with one or the other?
Yeah, like you're one of the, you're either helping out, watching over Jesse, or going to help out with Jesse's father. It's just like, I just felt like.
Is Gabby Hoffman also there, and is she still single?
Oh, good question. That I was not ready for that follow-up question. I'll let you say. I'm going to say yes.
Then yeah, 100%. I'm there by her side, and when she needs a shoulder to cry on, I'm right there.
Okay.
I'd hang out with Jesse. I think Jesse is like one of the coolest 9-year-olds out there, and he seems like really chill and fun, and we'll get into it why he's really good at communicating his feelings, right? But like, yeah, I'd hang out with Jesse.
I think I would help out Jesse's dad because I'm the guy who like gets called up to go do that hard thing sometimes.
You are. That is true. I can attest to that.
I don't know, because it's like it's on both sides. Like, who's the one taking the hard call? The one hanging out with Jesse, or the one helping Jesse's dad?
Well, I mean, both are in a challenging position, right? So both need the support, both need the help. But in my selfish ways, I want to have a little fun with a little kid and like take him to pizza.
Yeah.
Right? Well, that's just
go have ice cream before dinner. Chill out in New Orleans. Yeah,
exactly. Okay, let us know what you guys think in the comments down below and on YouTube. If you're listening to us on the podcast, then answer us when you're done driving.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, so something that our viewers and listeners know is when we have a guest, a special guest like Maggie, we like to ask them to choose a movie that has best shaped them. Something that we did in our pilot episode. I chose very lovingly and very predictable Jurassic Park because it shaped my love for movies and cinema. Like as a little kid, it left a big impact on me. You chose Remember the Titans.
I did.
And it shaped you, not just necessarily love for movie, but like it shaped you as a human as you were in a very crucial growing years of your life to be the man that you are today.
Correct.
Maggie, you chose Come On, Come On.
I did.
And I wanna hear from you how and in what ways has this movie shaped you?
Yeah. This is my favorite movie ever, and I hate that it's from 2021 because it makes me feel like not a cinephile. But I started college in 2020 during the pandemic year, and I spent all of it alone in a tiny little box doing online classes and being outside of home for the first time in my life.
Okay.
And that's a time to figure out a lot of things. But instead of figuring that out with a group of people, it was just me, myself, being like, who are you in the mirror the whole time? And I went to go see this movie. And as someone who was feeling sort of self-conscious when it came to their own filmmaking or their own writing or their own work, and also self-conscious about like being a human being and like existing outside of myself and how to do that, I watched this beautiful portrayal of two neurodivergent people trying to learn how to communicate and exist in a world around them, that made beauty out of everyday conversations that were true documentarian conversations, and then basically a description of Mike Mill's own child's life in the form of a narrative. Mm-hmm. And I found people who thought in a similar structure to how I did, making art out of just who they were and what they were thinking and how they thought it. And I realized, oh shit, you can do that. That's crazy. And it was, you guys already did an episode on La La Land. So I was like, I can't do La La Land. But in a similar way to how that as a kid made me realize, oh, you can be sad at the end of a movie as like a 12-year-old being like, wait, I have multiple emotions. This is crazy. It was a moment of, oh, I can turn every day into a symphony. Like they kind of do when he's standing under that bridge and he's holding up the mic to the train. And Joaquin Phoenix starts talking about how like he likes it because he gets to document it and overlap it. And he creates this symphony of sound from the world around him. And that there is art and there is beauty in that. And you do not have to be a regular person or feel like a normal person to have that sort of beauty in your life.
I love that. And I love that in that he says that it becomes immortal, right?
Yeah.
Like that is out in the world and it will last forever.
Yeah.
I think one of the other things is that as someone who I've consumed a lot of content, I love to create content. I truly appreciated the fact that he was a radio show producer, because radio is one of the most honest forms of medium. Because like we don't know what they look like. Even if it's like a story about poverty or whatever, like we can't judge them visually.
Yeah.
And there's it's, you know, when you watch movies, like sound effect is a huge aspect in like taking a like amateur level film into an immersive film. And that moment is like, it was just so, I also like, I don't know, the beauty of the fact that people sometimes just don't take a moment to capture. I've been rewatching the Newsroom recently, and in one of the episodes, they recap the fact that when they get Bin Laden, and Charlie Skinner, who's like the news director, he says everyone should take a moment. You can't spare more than 3 seconds, but take a moment and remember what this feels like, who you're standing by, like internalize those little moments. And like, I love that, like people don't like, we have phones that can do that for us and we don't do it in those moments as often. Not that like we have to, but I do think like even just the odd, like the Memo app, like hearing it, I got little voices of my daughters of like when they're like little babies, so that when they're like older, I can like put it into some movie when I like for their wedding, and I'm gonna like tear up making the edit. Anyways, yeah.
No, I love that. I think this you brought up this concept of like of them being and capturing that those chaotic moments and those chaotic sounds. But Joaquin characters, Joaquin character talks about that. Like there is chaos around us. There is so much happening, but he's able to capture that and layer sound to it and create this symphony. And it's such a beautiful like message to this entire movie. We'll get into it about chaos we feel internally, about chaos or insecurities that we have, and okay to like sit with these feelings, but there is, if we approach it right, there is a symphony of emotions, of life, of whatever it is that's laying there if we are in tune to it.
Yeah.
I found it wonderful in that chaos and in that feeling and sort of trying to organize it and feel it like a symphony. It was a time period in my life where I was going through figuring out my own diagnoses in terms of neurodivergence. I'm ADHD, I'm autistic. That is my lived experience. Having someone like Jesse's dad and Jesse going through those in different ways. Like, there's this little tiny scene where he's talking about, well, you have the triangles and you turn the triangles and blah, blah, blah. And my friend talked to me. She was like, what does that mean? And I was like, oh, that's an IQ test. That's you move the little blocks and they tell you if you have ADHD or not. And seeing people going through situations, I was only beginning to discover what it meant, or that it wasn't always people that went through that like that, but that seeing that lived experience and seeing how to handle it, how these people have chosen to connect with it emotionally, and how I can mirror that in my own life. Like I learned the rock throwing technique for anxiety that they talk about, and I use it all the time.
I learned a lot in this movie.
And it was fantastic to be like, oh, that's me on a screen, but they're not just showing me, which is also wonderful. They're also showing me how to deal with me.
I like that. I actually, if we can, let's actually jump into this a little bit. How do we feel this movie portrays I guess the question, does the film do an honest exploration of mental health, of societal expectations, generational gaps, right? There's so much happening here. Do we feel like it does an honest, sincere exploration of that?
All I can say is that I have never seen a more relatable child in my life. I was like, that is 9-year-old Maggie to a T, talking about the fungus trees, walking around pretending to be an orphan. Yes, 100% who I was as a kid.
I watched it 1.5 times. I didn't get to rewatch it a second time because I felt like I watched it the first time, and it was like it was a lot to unpack on one watch, on one film, one viewing. I also felt like the way they depicted it was even amplified with the fact that they decided to go with black and white. That we weren't bombarded by the colors or the like the overall visual atmosphere that comes from color, and we were just given the like a black and white so we could see them perform and in a lot of cases be able to connect with them, or at least come to understand different scenarios that we might connect and resonate with. So yeah, I think it does a really great job. I think Mills and team really do a phenomenal job.
You know, I think what and Maggie, thanks for sharing like a little bit about like your diagnoses, right? My wife was in. She's like, yeah, share all that you want about me on your podcast. She was totally. I have approval from her to do this, but no, she was recently in the last 8 months diagnosed with bipolar herself, and so like as someone who maybe doesn't have a parent, but like whose spouse is going through these things, I love the rawness of that despair from Viv, right? Who as a spouse is managing like her husband's challenges, her son's life just in general, and trying to help him understand and not like shy him away from what's happening, because Jesse has an understanding, right? Oh, yeah. He's aware, but earlier in the movie, Johnny asks Viv like it, or she says to Jesse, like, this isn't one of those trips like where we're gonna go have fun, right? It's a trip where she's gonna go and like take care of Dad. Yeah. And so like I love seeing that dynamic, that rawness, and that sincerity. And just I think for me, Viv just kind of the frustration and grasping for help is definitely something that hit home for me.
I have a question. This is not necessarily, so we have a segment that sometimes we like to do called the Reel Chums rewrites, where we like rewrite, we try to discuss like what would happen if something else happened. It's not that necessarily, but I think in the same vein. The question is, do we feel that if it was the story was from Viv and Jesse's point of view with Johnny coming in at like different times, would it have been as realistic or impactful? Does that make sense with what I'm asking?
Explain that a little bit.
Okay, so Viv, so we have the perspective is from Johnny's. Right? We're getting Johnny's perspective. If it had come from like Viv was the main character with and then cutting to Johnny at different times and Jesse, would it have been more realistic? Or like sorry, like how would that shifted?
I don't think it would work as well, only because Viv already understands Jesse.
Right.
A whole within a plotless film, as this really is. I love all my favorite films. My friends always tell me are things where nothing happens, but it's the emotional catalyst. So instead of like Star Wars hero's journey, it's, hey, you're a Jedi, come do this thing, and he's like, nah. In this instance, it's, hey, here's a kid you don't know, you need to understand him. Which initially starts as kind of like I'm not sure if I want to do this, and they end up going to New York. It's an emotional arc in that way, in which you need that catalytic jump to get you started. And in this instance, that jump is, oh, I have to understand this kid that I've barely seen. And I think from the other perspective, it wouldn't have as much impact because we're living inside of a routine that gets interrupted by a source we don't really understand. And that the true intriguing relationship is about two people getting to know each other at connected but so entirely separate points of their life.
Yes. I think one of the biggest themes that I got out of this movie was vulnerability, right? Like, I think had this movie been from Viv's point of view, yeah, she gets vulnerable, but she gets vulnerable after Johnny has been softened by Jesse, right? Mm-hmm. And I think and it's a better payoff for us to like see Viv kind of talk more and challenge Johnny as to why aren't we talking since mom has passed, right? And had we seen this all from Viv's point of view, I think it would have just been more routine, more we're feeling for her, we're feeling with her, but we're lacking that growth from these two characters, that lack of connectedness, that lack of vulnerability. Because they become vulnerable with each other, then Johnny's able to push, or I guess Viv is able to push Johnny to become even more vulnerable and build and create more of a relationship with all three.
I almost feel like it would be watching Sound of Metal from Olivia Cooke's character's perspective.
Oh
if that makes sense.
No, yeah. I think the reason why I asked is because sometimes for in a film, I like to think about what would this be if it wasn't from like this perspective, because we get then a better understanding of like the impact. And I think that, I mean, I agree with you guys. Like, this film is about taking down walls. I mean, when you have kids and you're trying to help them, because like this whole, I feel like to some degree, this film is about understanding as like adults, as a different generation, that, whatever at any point in history, that adults have different perspectives and grow up with different parents. And as adults, we try to help our children understand emotions, understand themselves, and grow to be better. And I think one of those, and I think like it's touched on just a little with the fact that like Viv and Johnny's like, and they're dealing with their mother, that like they dealt with the whole situation. Like, he kind of buries it, right? He's upset. He wants to like, and she's trying to deal with the reality. And like, I don't know what I do know. I was going to say, like, I don't know if like necessarily as individuals, as society, that feeling like hiding, that we as a society need to feel more, and we need to be okay with letting some other people know what we're going through.
I think there's also that understanding that, hey, your kids are people too.
Oh my gosh.
Where it's not just what can you teach your children, it's what can your children teach you? What do they understand that you don't? And all those beautiful questions from the real life kids that are like doing a documentary in the middle of this fictional story, of just like, they think about the future and they have responsibilities, and the way that their worldview shapes them is just as impactful as an adult growing into their worldview. In that it's a separation not just of mentorship, but of mutual appreciation of one another.
I love that you said that. I was actually listening to an interview that Mike Mills did for the Directors Guild, and in it, and I wrote it down. Let me pull up my notes. Actually, he talks about he's being asked about the movie, and he talks about like he was inspired by, like you mentioned, by his son at the time. But he says, I quote, he says, "This movie really is about the understanding of yourself can only happen in relationship to other people." Right? And he's being interviewed by Spike Jonze, and in this interview, and Spike goes on to say, like, we forget that like we become parents because we have children, and like we can only become a better father, a better mother, because though our kids are challenging us. And they're like, that's the only way. Like we aren't born knowing how to be a good parent or how to be a good mother, right? It's through these challenges and through having these relationships that we come to know ourselves in relationship to other people.
Yeah. It's a very Sartrean explanation of things, which I like.
Yeah.
I often my wife and I, and when we talk, there are times when I'm like, I also have the realization that I think Viv says it, like, they're just little people. Like there's, like,
yeah.
And I think that sometimes, like, it is so humbling in the sense to realize that, like, these aren't just like, they're not like things that beings that don't know things.
Yeah.
They just don't have words for them yet.
Mm-hmm.
But they have feelings. They may have some semblance of ramblings that might share what their thoughts, and as they get older, they get a little bit better to communicate. I think that like it's I love the, like, not only the, like, little documentary nuggets, but also the, like, different little stories, like, of the books that they're reading that put, like, little these anecdotal, like, context of, like, of moments that, like, it just in life, like, you read a book and you read this passage and it has, like, huge impact.
Yeah. I went on to read Mothers of Art and Cruelty by Jacqueline Rose after. And it transformed the way I look at theater and the way I look at art and the way I look at women within art. And it literally watched it because of that one chapter that they read. That's like a paragraph from the first chapter. And every single thing that this movie talks about is bled throughout that whole chapter. It is Viv's perspective in a book. And it's fantastic. So I'm going to recommend that because I read it because of this movie and it's great.
Put it in show notes.
Put it in the show notes. I absolutely loved Star Child. Is that what it was called?
Yes.
Yeah.
I got on Amazon and I'm like, I am getting this because I'm getting this for my kids. No, I'm getting this for myself. Like, it's
I fully got a copy for my for Christmas from my friend. She got me the A24 copy. It was like, do you want this children's book? And I was like, yes, please. Yes, I do.
It's so good. And I love that story of Star Child where, you're going to come to this planet and you're going to be overwhelmed with emotions, with sadness, with joy, with guilt, regret, but you're gonna grow, you're gonna be better. And I love that after he finishes reading, that Johnny is crying a bit and he's like, wow, that was deep. Right?
I'm literally crying right now thinking about it. I'm not even gonna joke. You started explaining the book and I was like, I'm gone.
But it is so good, especially at this moment where Jesse has been moved to a different state. There's challenges happening at home with dad. Uncle Johnny is kind of figuring what's happening, but it's cool being in New York and hearing all these sounds, and he's exploring. He's literally living what this star child is going through, and it's so impactful, yet there is so much pain happening at the same time, but he is living in the moment, and I love that.
It is so on the show, you've heard me say, like, more movies need to have moments for us to feel. This movie is just one long roller coaster ride of feelings, and it might take somebody, like, I don't know. At what point did you guys it started hitting you?
Moment one. Gone. I will say, though, I've once given a list of my favorite movies to my friends, and they looked at each other and went, that is the saddest list of movies I've ever heard in my entire life. So that might just be a me thing.
I think for me, it happened after Viv has left. No, I take it back. I think it happened right when we started getting flashbacks of Johnny with his mom and Viv coming in and her almost not accusing him, but just like calling out, like, you mom always almost to a degree favored you growing up. And I always felt like I didn't connect with her. But then you're getting these flashbacks of how he's helped, like, let's get you dressed. Your dad's coming to take you to the DMV. And then she walks in and she's like, what are you doing? Right. And I think that's when it hit me for me. I'm like, okay, like I can see this struggle happening between siblings. Like that's challenging.
Say, even in that moment in my third in-theater watch through, I noticed that there's another flashback where she's sitting with her mom and she's wearing her cardigan. And I didn't notice that she was wearing her cardigan the first few times through. And she's holding it with that sentence of where she says, she's like, you're losing a mom who loved you more than anything. And she's sitting and she's wrapped herself in the DMV jacket and is sitting next to her mother to feel that emotion and to try to wrap herself in it. And to your point, fantastic.
I think for me, it might have been, I think it's still Viv and Johnny is the not talking, but like talking. Like they're like, oh, hey, how's it going? And it's not because they don't love each other, right? But because their circumstances, what they've chosen, like, especially after like a parent dies, right? And I think about like, we look at this context of like this movie of like, we don't get that early generation. We get those small little glimpses, but that like you said earlier, that parental relationship really comes out as you start to understand like who your child is, or even like who that significant other or good friend that you might open up to, how those relationships kind of like reflect and connect us and can but to some degree alienate each other as like family members or like as friends.
And in the moment that they're talking about the same woman, but they can have the most contrasting accounts of who that person is. And that, again, you're not just raising your children and it's your life and they're your kids. It's you're their parent and they have their own perspective and their own point of view. And your interactions individually with each child are also building that image of who you are inside of their minds.
Yeah, it is strong.
It's powerful in the sense that, Maggie, are you an only child?
I am, yeah.
You are. But I think we often, I don't know, maybe this is just me. Side note, I've been told not to talk about like kids on podcasts because you alienate your audience, but I'm just going to say this one time. Like I think now as I've become a parent, it's I look back and realize like, oh, okay, I see where my parents really struggled with us. And but I also see their successes.
Yeah.
And now that we have two kids, it's like, how can I help these two little human beings, these little persons, really navigate a love for each other and also a love for and respect for their parents, because we're just big humans, whereas they're little humans, right? And I think for me, it really hit when Johnny is he lost Jesse for a bit, right? And he calls Viv and which I'll talk about that in a second, but he calls her and she says, just talk to him, like figure out how he's feeling and like let him know why you got upset. Like that's all you need to do. It's okay that you yelled at him, but like tell him why you were upset, right? And I think it's going back to alienating our relationships. We are not vulnerable enough with family, with coworkers, with the neighbors, with whoever it is, where we end up creating these walls of misunderstanding. And most of the time, it's not because we are trying to be rude or mean towards someone. It's this lack of vulnerability, and we put up these walls, and this miscommunication happens.
So you're afraid to say you're afraid.
Yeah. Which I think that's like Johnny.
Yeah.
Like he's like he hasn't had that moment. I love the like email or the where he's like, just Google the thing where you have to like talk through your like feel. I was like, this is a thing. Like I need this for myself and for me and my kids, because like because no one talks about this. No one
Well, it's also like approaching from that perspective of neurodivergence, especially with Jesse, where it's like when you don't understand what people are doing around you socially innately, and no one says what they mean. It is the most confusing thing in the world. And I would have a lot of difficulty in the same way he did, where I would act out, or I'd be upset and I couldn't understand why I was upset. And I like just felt it. And I was like, I know I shouldn't feel like this, but I can't understand it. And until I started talking with my parents and being like, hey, I'm really, really angry right now. That like machine over there is really, really loud. That person's talking at this volume. This is happening behind me. I feel like I'm going to scream. That it like went away. Because I could be like, I need to remove myself from this. And instead of my parents being like, well, why do you need to leave right now? It was oh, okay, I understand what's going on around you. Let's move this direction. Or growing up now, I will literally talk to my friends and I'll be like, hey, I had a really nice time tonight. Did you have a nice time? And they'll go like, oh my God, yes, I did. And it's an immediate like, okay, great. We're friends. We like each other. We understand this. Fantastic. And approaching it from that angle of being like, yeah, the world is big and confusing and your parents aren't telling you everything and something is wrong, but you don't really understand what's wrong. And it's all so much, but you know, you're not supposed to be angry because being angry is bad because when people yell, you feel bad. And it's just that saying it out loud that makes it all feel so much more clear.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think I'll say this about like my friendship with Danny here. Like he's probably like the only guy that I've allowed myself to be vulnerable with and just like excuse me, and like talk about some of these challenges or just talk about like not have any walls up. Talk. And just talk, right? And it's so true. I think, you know, you brought up this point earlier about like what good or how can society become more vulnerable with each other? And it kind of just comes to that, just talking.
You have in the show notes the analyzing the role of empathy in the film, and I think, what moment do you feel like for you connected like such a powerful empathic moment?
I think for me, I think it was seeing Viv immediately just going to her husband, right? And understanding that as my wife has gone through like figuring out her diagnoses and like it was one thing, no, it was another thing. And it's been years of trying to figure out really what it is that she couldn't really express and say or feel. And to now have that, I've been in those moments where it's been like, I'll drop anything just to like tend to her or to be there for her. Right. But also like there was that moment when like Johnny calls Viv and she's like, and he says, I'm tired. I have to work. I have to take care of Johnny, of Jesse. Right. It's like, yeah, man, I've been there. Like there's so much to juggle as a functioning adult. But yeah, I think Viv's immediate need to go and tend and be there for her husband was mine.
Yeah. I love, in addition to that vulnerability and kind of in that vein, how this movie allows every single person to be helpless. And I think that's where empathy really shines beyond walls, beyond that sort of, oh, I can see what you're going through. It's also that, oh, you are helpless. You can't, like that I am tired and I don't know what to do. Or that aspect of with Viv and her husband of like, I want to be able to be better and I don't know how to feel better. Like I have all of these things and like these things aren't right and I need to know how to put these things away and I want to take these things, but I don't know how to take these things and I really, really want to, but my hands won't move and I can't go do it. Which is the hardest thing to explain to people, to be like, yes, I really want to go do this thing, but my body will not move. And the same with that emotional helplessness of Viv being like, I have to be here for him.
Yeah.
Like, I understand your point of view, Johnny, of saying like that thing they always go back to of like he telling her to leave him or that she's like, no, like this is the person that I love and I can't help that I love this person. This is what I'm going to do. And that there is in that Star Child story, you're going to feel love and you're going to feel sadness and you're going to feel pain and you can't help it. That is what life is at its basest core. But isn't that beautiful, you know?
Yeah. I think for me, it's Jesse's helping Johnny feel. His like, because but it's because the way he go, like, because he's like not testing him, but testing him, but also trying to help teach him, but not on fully understanding like how to like fully do it, other than just like kind of begin to let him in, and for Johnny to kind of like sort of begin to let him in, and have this like back and forth of a oh, okay, so we're gonna do this now. Oh, okay, okay. So what if it happens with this and what that? And I don't know. There's something about the Jesse having him expressing feelings and sharing, and then having to have Johnny, like him feeling more acceptance of Johnny, but then Johnny like not fully understanding because he's new to the situation. Like he's learning a whole bunch of stuff that like, you know, Viv, or whatever, you know, like other parents have to deal with as they grow older or whatever with their, you know, as they raise their kids. Him coming in and trying to, you know, be helpful and get a sense, you know, I think to me one of the biggest is the fact that he suggests to Viv that, can I bring him to New York with me?
Yeah.
Right. And then he kind of brings it up. It's something I would totally do of like, yo, do you want to go to New York with me? You know, let me talk to your mom. Like I do that. Like, that's just like, why didn't you talk to me? Now he's good. And like, it is what it is. But like, I've done many things like this, but it's because like you're sometimes, you know, I don't know. It's just those, the empathy that is shown in this film is truly something we don't see, not only in film very often, but like in just, if we do feel it, it's something that we like may never find ourselves in like a situation, or it's very specific. It doesn't just feel real. Does it make sense?
Yes. And I think a couple of weeks ago we talked about the movie Stepmom.
Oh man,
right?
Have you seen Stepmom? Okay, you need to watch it and then listen to our episode.
On the list.
But we talked about empathy in that movie as well. We talked about how, you know, the stepmom begins to empathize, as well as the mom begins to empathize with the future stepmom, right? And how that brought them together. But it's not portrayed. What I loved about Come On is we are able to see three different characters, three different individuals beginning to empathize with everyone together, right? What Johnny is seeing, what Johnny's experiencing, he begins to empathize with Viv, and Viv understanding Johnny, and Jesse realizing that, like I can be, sometimes I am a handful because I don't know how to express myself, right? And I get maybe my mom's frustrations, right? And it's portrayed so well and so sincere. And I think like a huge shout out to Mike Mills on this. Like the dialogue feels so natural.
Yeah.
Right? It like at one point I'm like, did they just decide to just like roll and like just do whatever you want?
A couple of the scenes are. I've seen some behind the scenes moments. A couple of them are them just rolling on stuff they were doing behind the scenes together.
And it's great because it translates to everything else that is scripted, right? And that requires a lot of trust in your performers, right? But as well as a lot of understanding from the performers to really figure out what it is that we're trying to portray here, what message is it that we're getting, that we're going to have these just let it roll, have these conversations, and have that translate to what is scripted and to those interactions. I loved it. It was so beautiful.
All right, Maggie, I want to know a little bit, what's some stuff that you want to share with us you find that some people you feel like are missing? Because you said from the moment you watched this for the first time,
yes,
you were here for it.
Absolutely. I love hearing kids talk about the future. It was immediately that thing. I've taken care of kids for a long time. I had small groups. I raised my cousins, all sorts of different things. And they're just mini adults, like you say. And the thing they want more than anything in the world is to be treated like an adult. And most of the time when you take care of them, they're pretty chill. If you're just like, hey, dude, you need to calm down. They're like, oh, I do? Cool. Thanks. And I am always fascinated by the idea of what do these small people see of me and of the world around them, because they're discovering it right now.
Yeah.
And they will never experience that again. And if you don't ask them, what are you thinking? It'll change the next day. That's the beautiful thing about kids, is they're learning something new all the time.
Yeah.
So every single time you ask them a question, they're seeing it from an entirely different viewpoint. And opening with that, I was like, oh, I'm going to love this movie. This is, I'm going to love this. And I did. And I've seen it many times in the theater and out of. And again, it is a bit of that neurodivergence. And it's also, I love when they're just yelling fuck back and forth. Because it is that idea of, oh, I'm allowed to be angry. This situation is fucked up. Yeah. And we always bury that. We're like, no, I am a human being and I'm dealing with it and it's fine and everything's cool. But sometimes you just want to yell fuck. And like, I direct theater part-time. And I've started what I call the fuck circle * not an orgy, which is we all just, if we're having a day and everything feels like it's going wrong, or we just need to feel in the scene and let everything else out, I will be like, okay, repeat after me. And I will just scream fuck at the top of my lungs and get everyone else in the circle to do it too. And it is this group bonding activity of that vulnerability of just being like, you know what? Today sucked. It was awful. I feel awful and I don't want to feel awful anymore. So I'm going to throw that out there. It's okay to feel bad. Now I'm going to step forward. Me and my friends say, this is an anecdote. I apologize. I once, for some reason, was traveling by myself to New York, and I decided to walk from the edge of Williamsburg to East Williamsburg in 80-degree heat with a suitcase.
Wow. Ooh, that sounds like a terrible experience.
It was a bad choice, but I did it. And I made it to the end. And I say, it sucks shit. I took a little nap. I put on a cowboy shirt and I went to see a show. And so now if anything bad happens in our life, we go, you know what? No, that sucks shit. That was awful. I'm going to take a little nap. I'm going to put on my cowboy shirt and I'm going to go see a show. And just allowing ourselves that moment of being like, no, this is a lot. The world is a lot, and we are allowed to feel joy. We are allowed to feel pain, and we're allowed to fucking talk about it. And that to me was just like, yeah, yes, all of it.
I have a deep problem with it's just fine. I grew up, I mean, both my parents are Hispanic, and the man doesn't really talk about their feelings. It just doesn't happen. Marcel,
yeah,
it doesn't happen, and so I just learned to just plow, just headlong, go forward. It's fine. It's gonna be fine. I'm gonna work through it, and like I've learned to forgive very quickly because I found that you can't hold on to that. But something that I haven't learned is how to feel that it's okay to feel angry.
Yeah,
it's okay to like not only that, but like have my kids to be okay to feel that, for them to feel angry or feel those feelings. And in fact, today, like they were, had those moments, but it is like people are allowed, like it's like society to some degree has said there is no way that you can be upset. Yeah. And if you do, that change, everyone's got to be like, okay, don't talk to Marcel. He's upset today.
Yeah. It's even that like, oh, you think you're special enough that you get to feel bad while the rest of us are just doing this?
Yeah.
And it's self-insecurity of like, well, you should be able to push through.
I'm here. Yeah. I'm pushing through all my crap.
Yeah.
So you should too.
It's interesting that you bring that up. I was actually, I see my therapist like every other week, right? And I was telling him, I'm like, I just like, it's hard for me to talk just because like, you bring up like being Hispanic, the male macho doesn't talk about their feelings. I was telling him, I'm like, I just don't think like being an immigrant, like we couldn't afford the luxury of talking about our feelings.
Yeah. That's
right?
great. That's great.
Like mom had to work all the time. Dad had to work all the time. They were really...
I tried to be a good example, or I had to be like, I feel like I need to like make sure that I'm doing what they came here for a reason.
They came here for a reason. I need to make sure that I live up to not just expectations, but to that sacrifice that they've made.
Yeah.
Or even like, I can't act out in a way because there's already an expectation that, oh, you know, this brown kid is going to act out in school, right? Like, no, I have to make sure I'm always on point, right? And you know, and my therapist said that, like, yeah, you just didn't have the luxury to allow yourself to feel, to talk about feelings, to have these emotions come out. And I think that's challenging, because now as I've gotten older, like, I'm all about feeling like, let's talk about it. Like, I want to be there to help you, to help whoever it is, to empathize with you. Like, maybe I have something that I can help you with, or you might have something that I can help me with it.
Ted Lasso. Okay. Can we just do a quick, weird side? Okay. I think,
excuse me.
When Ted Lasso and people say when he comes into like a whole different culture and from a different sports perspective, and then something happens, like, okay, I can't wait to unpack that. That is what society needs more of.
Yeah. I do that every day, and people look at me like I'm insane.
But
I will walk into a room and be like, "What's up, guys? My car just broke down, and I feel like I'm gonna faint." And everyone's like, "Cool, like, thank you so much."
But we like that, and I love that it's like the culminate. I don't know if it would be like the full climax, but them yelling, him's like, "Hey, are you angry? Just yell, like stomp your," and that we don't let that out, or we don't let ourselves just cry, or like, it's almost like, because of, like, in a weird sense, I feel like the fact that it came out in 2021, this film came out in 2021, obviously that wasn't planned, unless I don't remember when they started shooting.
They finished filming I think he said in November of 2020. I can't remember.
Okay, so probably height. I mean, for me, it's like this, the journey that, like, that hopefully we all, when we get to the end of this film, that we can sit there and we can hear Johnny or Joaquin Phoenix say, just yell, like, I just like have that, and that hopefully that we get to that point where, like, you know what, I need to leave here and just, I need to yell at the stars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A good steering wheel yell, always recommend.
Oh, I do too.
They're fantastic.
Yeah, I have many of those.
Pillow over the face.
Also, and like that thing you're talking about too for Jesse, where he doesn't feel like he's able to break down because his parents are. He's
Correct.
Like, everything around me is so fucked up right now that I can't be the one to break it.
Yes.
And even if he doesn't consciously know that, it's just that pressure where it's like you already have this cracking piece, and then you pile it and pile it and pile it and pile it until he's just a ball of, like, I don't know how to deal with this. Until
like hardcore flashbacks,
just
right?
Like having the permission to break in that moment.
And it's such a, we'll get to like our favorite scenes, but that's one of my favorite scenes. Is just it. He says, you know, it's okay if you're sad. We're all sad sometimes, and that just captures basically like the film's emphasis on emotional vulnerability, right? But it also shows like Johnny's nurturing nature as he comforts and reassures Jesse that it's acceptable to experience sadness and that it's a universal human emotion and it's okay to do it. As a matter of fact, not only okay to do it, but to encourage to feel that and to express it.
And I love that in a way he's telling himself, because the whole movie, everyone's like, oh my God, you're like a little baby Johnny. You guys are so similar. You look the same. That's crazy. And you're like, oh, metaphor. We love it. Great. Beautiful. And getting that moment of him finally having opened up to Viv, but not himself, where he's capable of being like, no, my girlfriend left me and that sucks shit. And I'm going to take a little nap and I'm going to put on a cowboy shirt and I'm going to go see a show. But being like, yeah, I'm going to be angry about that. I didn't let myself even realize she left. I have that realization. Now I'm in a moment. I'm talking to this kid, but I'm also talking to myself and saying, your life is fucked right now. You're charting around your nephew around the country because you have no one else. And you're trying to figure out what you want to do. If you want to be interviewing, who you're working with, what the future is. And it's okay to be upset about that.
Yeah. I love that.
This movie is truly a gem.
Maggie, thanks for introducing us to this one.
I'll be honest. When you said, come on, I was like, come on. And I'm like 2021, how is it? Like, but, and I'm like, honestly, I was like, how did I miss this film?
I remember seeing trailers for it. And I was like,
let's
get to it. But I just never did. But yeah, no, it's solid.
That's why I went to it so many times. I was like, I gotta support. Nobody knows. I gotta be there. I gotta be there for everyone.
Yeah, this Maggie, I just want to appreciate, I really want to thank you for your comment about Jesse's and his like the pressure. I didn't connect that until you started talking. I mean, I got it because I fully connected because that's me and that was me as a child. But like it hit like you describing it was like, oh my, of course that's what like he's feeling and that's what like, and I'm like, but I know exactly what that feeling is. I had it so many times as a kid. Anyways, all right. And it just goes to show that like kids aren't kids. They're just little adults, little people. They're just figuring stuff out for their first time.
And in that moment, I'm a very religious household and I was always taught everyone else is first. And it's that like everyone else's emotions are more important than your own. And you have to be able to control yourself because it's the only thing you can control to make sure that others are comfortable and that the world around you is good and happy. And so it's that breaking moment of, okay, you upset me right now, but I'm going to hold that in because it's not kind. And you are more important than I am. So I'm going to put myself down here and I'm going to let you be there. And it's that slow buildup, that slow to the breaking point of all these little things that are like, nope, I'm fine. I'm fine, until you get to the point where you're like, I'm not fucking fine. This is awful. Yeah.
Man, that's weird. So let's talk favorite scenes.
I'll kick it off. I mean, we talked about that scene where they kind of let out, just express their frustration. I think this is kind of what made me just like, at the end, I was like, I love this movie. There's a scene where Jesse asks Johnny, am I going to grow up to be like my dad? Right. And it's funny because there was a scene earlier where he had too much sugar and like he's acting out, he's going all crazy. And me in my mind, I'm like, oh no, like, is he having like a manic attack or like is that underlying bipolarism like slowly coming out, and like how is Johnny going to manage this? It wasn't that, it was just sugar.
Very similar.
Very similar. That's true. Very similar. And so I had that question throughout the movie, and I love that Jesse asks that because that's something that he's been aware of. He knows that his dad is struggling and that it's been sitting there for him, and he has not had the confidence to ask that to his mom. So he asks Johnny, am I going to be like my dad? And I just love that in this 2.5 hour journey, Johnny says, no, maybe not, because your mom has taught you how to express yourself, how to talk about your emotions, and how to manage those emotions. Right. And that's what hit me. Not because my wife and I have had this question, or we've talked about this, she's like, there's a good chance that one of our kids, if not both of them, might be like me or bipolar or whatever. And it's like, it's fine. Like we know now how to have those conversations and how to navigate that and how to begin to encourage our children to just kick and scream and whatever when they're feeling those frustrations, right? I just loved it. That just like was the culmination to what I wanted. That payoff that I had been asking the whole movie is, how is he feeling about all of this? And there it is with a simple question.
Man, I feel like I need to go watch this tonight again, because like I'm like reliving all these scenes in my mind, and all I can think about is like I had so many feelings buried, and I watched it and I was like, this is good. I feel like this is such powerful. And then I like rewatching it, like I was trying to watch it a second time because I felt like I need to, because it was just like I was like, there's something more here that I'm like, I wanted to connect more. I feel like I've like through this conversation my like shell cracked, and I'm like, okay, I think I can be better, like just resonate more deeply with the characters. Anyways, I don't know why I'm like over here like hardcore tearing.
It's wonderful.
It's
the point of the movie.
Yes, thank you. It is the point of the movie, and people should cry in movies.
Yes.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Dude, I cried. I didn't cry for 4 years in my life. And the minute I first cried again to a movie was the happiest moment of my life. Like, to be like, I can feel this again. I can be here and I can feel this with this artist who has put it on screen for me. And people are like, haha, you cry. And I'm like, yeah, that's what they want.
Yeah. This
that's the point.
Exactly the point. People like, I think people don't like, that's if blockbusters or studios really want people to really like understand that, like make someone feel torn, whether that be like even if it's a freaking superhero. I want to feel like I want to cry for that person, because like then because that's the truest form of like connection, is to be able to feel. I cried
at Peter Parker in that little lake, looking at his face, being like, come on, Spider-Man, come on, Spider. I'm like, oh, he's a kid, he's a child, and he needs to do it.
Okay, so sorry, I'm gonna we really love feelings here at Reel Chums.
Oh, yes, dude, I'm the one who recommended this movie, don't I? No. Yes.
Truly. My favorite scene is it's really simple. I don't know why. There's something to me that I love about every scene where Jesse has the microphone and he's just going about. I don't know what it is. I just, every single time I saw those scenes, I like see Joaquin as like his character Johnny, but also just like as an individual, seeing this kid, and the kid like experience something amplified, and something that like as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, that I get to do. Like I capture these things, and people are always like, I don't want to be on camera, and I'm like, it's like we're just trying to capture moments that you're already living. It's not like, like a lot of my stuff that I do for work is corporate work, or like, some stuff for like social, but like a lot of it's real. It's not, I'm not doing films. Part of it just because like it's a huge sacrifice to do a film. Not that it's a bad sacrifice, but like it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of commitment and a lot of moving parts. Even if you're doing a small production, and that's why, but I love the fact that like this film felt like just, it was so well written, so well shot, and like characters were key, that you just felt like you're like, am I watching a movie or am I watching life?
Yeah.
And like, I think part of that just comes to Woody Norman as Jess.
Yeah, as Jesse.
Did you know he's British?
What?
Yeah, he is.
Hey, when that happens.
He's a British rocker skater boy. And the most intelligent child I've ever read an interview from.
Really?
It's insane. He's like, I really think that like if we dive back into the 80s when it comes to this rockabilly, and I'm like, what the hell?
The 80s. Oh. Yeah, I was reading actually. They were asking Mike Mills like how they came across him, and they sent out the casting call, and he was actually the second person to audition. He's like, we got lucky. It was only like the second one, and right after like I engaged with him, I was like, yeah, that's him. But he says like the reason what sold him about him is that a lot of times, especially like children, when they come to audition, like they're very poised and they're reading the lines and they're coming in, and he's like, no, he was like rubbing his eyes, just playing with his hair, like he had his feet up on the chair, and like he's like, yeah, that's the rawness. That's just a child being a child, and like he like Woody Jesse understood that, and he just did that. Like such insight from such a young actor. It was great.
He's a cool little guy. I love him.
Yeah, he seems like 100%. So yeah, that's those little that's my favorite. Those are my favorite scenes.
Yes.
Yours, Maggie?
Mine's the end. When he's reading back to him and he's saying, "You asked me if you'd remember this. I'll remember it for you." And it again goes back to that recording thing. It's that symphony. This was a point in our lives that is special to us, but in the grand scheme of things is not the most special thing that we're going to encounter. And we're not going to remember it as the most special thing we're going to encounter.
Yeah.
But by the act of recording and choosing to remember something or someone, it becomes special. And I love that. That's because, again, I talked about Sartre earlier. I'm very much a philosophy bitch, and I'm very much an existentialist. And I love, a lot of my friends will ask me, they're like, well, if you think there's no point, why do you care? And I'm always like, because that means anything I decide is the point becomes the point. If I decide that this is the thing that makes me happy and gives my life fulfillment, then it does, because I've decided that that's the thing. And seeing that reflected in such a personal and emotional and intimate way between two people who just love each other and want to understand each other even more was so lovely. And I cried my eyes out, and it was great.
Yeah. So I made little movies for both the births of my children. And I will I try to capture little other moments throughout life and whatever, whether I don't care if it's like not on my like nice camera or it's just on my phone. Like I just want to capture some of those moments, and I cannot wait to like package that for my kids.
Yeah.
Like I'll try to make some little movies for when they like go, sometimes depending on if I can do it or like the situation, but like the little school plays, not school plays, but like their school little performances. I'll like grab a couple shots that like something that's like condensed, not just record the whole thing. Like I needed something to be like a little bit more like that, not just a raw moment, but like feeling of the whole moment.
Yeah.
And again, I think that like the audio portion of stuff, like I had another time where I've like recorded where I was like reading a book to my kids, because I just wanted to have that like those little moments that happen in between the pages.
I like that.
Because like those are like, it is my words.
You even got scenes like that in the movie of like her reading on the phone, The Wizard of Oz, or him reading, and he suddenly interrupts and he's like, "Why aren't you married?" Which it's so funny. I was listening to the director's commentary on that bit, and they had apparently on that take said they weren't going to do that they were just going to do a reading moment, but Woody Norman didn't hear him or just chose not to hear him. And he said it. So Joaquin Phoenix was like, "Oh, so like the surprise is a genuine like, oh, you're asking me that question. Cool. Well," which is wonderful.
Man, I really wish I would have loved like this. I need to look up the editor interviews for this film, because I feel like that's like I think that's where part of this film comes into play. It's like, I mean, I think they probably had so much stuff to like work with in like a lot of different scenarios, but I feel like the editing like for this film really had a huge effect. And like unlike what scene choices, what they anyways, I don't know, so I'm gonna have to look into that. Alrighty,
this was great. Great choice.
Thanks.
Yeah, this was awesome. This is a great movie. I'm bummed that I slept on it so long and finally got to it.
I'm so glad that we just kind of plowed through different movies, and that because you're the second person that like has said, well, I was going to do this one thing, but you already did this.
Yeah.
Because we got this nugget, and I truly am so grateful that you chose this movie.
Absolutely. It's my favorite movie of all time. And
let's go.
Everyone should watch it. Also watch Mike Mills' other films. 20th Century Woman is a masterpiece. It's pretty great.
I hear 20th Century Woman is great. I've been
very good.
It's on my watch list.
Okay, we'll have to-
Same production designer as Lady Bird.
Oh, okay.
Fun facts.
Good stuff.
Mhm.
We love good production design.
Yeah,
Yes.
we do actually.
We do.
We've talked
This
about it a lot.
film was just his friends' houses. Fun fact about Come On, Come On.
Oh, interesting.
Who's
Mike Mills. That was
Mike
like, so
Mills.
like their really nice, like full looking house was just how his friends' house is.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It's good. So filmmaking, like, yeah, filmmaking sometimes is just like, how can you, who can you ask favors for?
That's
Alrighty. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Reel Chums. Maggie, what can people, what do you want to put people? I know you have a new newsletter.
I do. I write, it's called Words in all caps by Maggie Hill or by Maggie Hill. I can't remember which one I put. But I'm talking about stuff there. I'm also posting on YouTube very soon.
Yes.
Yeah, it's going to be very similar to my short form content of me ranting about things I love. And if you want to find that content, it's at the Maggie Hill or the Maggie Hill. THE, my name. Thank you.
Thank you again, Maggie, for coming on. And you can find me on Twitter, Rubio_TV, or YouTube at Danny Rubio. Or you can find us at Reel Chums, wherever you get YouTube, Instagram,
Twitter,
all the things. We do really appreciate that you guys were listening. If you love Come On, Come On, if you enjoyed this episode and you enjoyed feeling, we'd love it if you could feel yourself 5 stars in the podcast rating so we can maybe help find some new people. And hopefully get some new friends that come and listen to us talking about movies.
More importantly, we want to hear about you and what you thought of Come On, Come On. What emotions did you feel? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Tell us all. We've gotten a couple, I think probably for our 25th episode, we'll like do some readings of emails we've gotten. So
yes,
send those in. We want to hear from you guys. Join us next week. We're going to discuss Man of Steel.
Correct.
It's coming up on its 10-year anniversary. They're going to do the whole universe. So, we're going to revisit Man of Steel and talk more DC stuff.
Yep. So we'll see you guys in the next one.
Thank you all.